our brains as porn addicts are really being trained by pornography. The addiction will have you saying something like, you know, my partner just needs to get over this and I'll do whatever it takes to keep porn in my life, as opposed to my partner's the most important thing in my life and I'll do whatever I have to get rid of the porn.
The title of our talk today is It's Just Porn. What's the big deal? Right? That is a question that I know it's a conversation that's happened many times in many households, especially among partners, when they are dealing with use in a relationship that was supposed to be monogamous. That's what at least the arrangement was at the beginning, was that they were going to be in an exclusive monogamous relationship. And then, of course, when the woman understands, hey, this has been something he's been doing behind my back for many years, or, hey, I've known about this, but now it's really becoming obvious that's an issue in our relationship. Then it becomes, the topic of conversation. And usually for men, a lot of the time, they don't really realize why it's a big deal. And it's typically the women who understand much quickly why this is a big deal. So today we're going to go into answering that question and kind of giving a little bit of a perspective from both sides of this, because we both on our own kind of understood slowly why this was such a big deal. And, it's really good for people to hear that each side of that experience and what that was like for us. And I'm sure you're going to be able to relate a lot to what we are talking about today. So, let's just start with you. When we were talking about this topic and what we were going to share, I asked you, like, what comes to mind when you think about what's the big deal? And I know you've got your kind of experience of what it was like for you to kind of realize what a big deal was. So maybe you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get started, I just want to acknowledge all the pain that the women are in who are listening to this or watching this right now, because what I'm about to share that's true for my story may not be true for your own story. And I hope that either way that you're able to share this content with your partner, and that it's able to make a really profound impact on his ability to kind of take a deeper look at himself and his experience, to be able to relate to what it is that I'm going to share today. And I know that for Katie and I, the experience that we had when it came to betrayal trauma and our journey to overcoming porn addiction, it's very different than a lot of other couples that we talk with. And one of the main reasons for that is Katie and I got into a relationship when I was in my early 30s, and I had spent about the last 18 years or so being in relationships where relationship after relationship had failed. And so when I think about the question, what's the big deal? It's very obvious to me for why it's a big deal, because I noticed a pattern of trends that happened relationship after relationship, where I was very interested in different women at the beginning of the relationship when they were new, when everything was exciting. There was all this desire and interest in who they were. And really, it was coming from a place of not necessarily connection, but more coming from a place of arousal and anticipation and a need sexually that I was trying to fulfill. And so when the excitement wore off, when I was used to spending a lot of time around the different women that I was dating, it became very apparent to me that what was more preferred by my brain and my reward system was going back to pornography. And so relationship after relationship, I noticed this trend where I would get into a relationship, things would be hot and heavy very early on, and then it would quickly die off. And the first thing that would come to my mind is, well, this relationship isn't going to work. I don't really know how to even be in a monogamous relationship that's a long-term relationship. So I'm just going to end the relationship, turn to porn, and maybe I just won't date for a while again. And I'll just use porn as basically the way that I fulfill this need that I could feel that I had deep down.
Quick question. Did you ever think to yourself it might be because there's something wrong with her that you weren't interested anymore? Like, did it cross your mind that, oh, maybe if she was more this way or that way?
Yeah, I'd say that those types of thoughts came up pretty frequently throughout all my relationships, where it was always, if there's something different about her, then maybe she would be good enough to meet these urges and these cravings that I had that would be more sexually fulfilling. And what I learned over time is that that wasn't true. And right before I was getting into a relationship with Katie, I was at this really profound moment in my life where I had realized the pattern that had happened over all of my failed relationships. And coming into the relationship, I had already acknowledged to myself, I think that porn's a problem. I can see that, like, even getting into this relationship when I was just starting with Katie, when she said, I'm not looking to be sexually intimate, I was like, yeah, that's not a problem at all, right? Because I had porn. And so at the same time, I was also having thoughts about how, wow, like, this is off. There's something isn't right here. I'm seeing the trend, and I'm seeing that porn is an issue. It's not allowing me to actually connect to any woman that I get into a relationship with. It is the number one thing that I always turn to instead of a partner. There's never a relationship that I've gotten into that has been able to pull me away from pornography. And it's like, I knew then and there at the beginning of our relationship that this was a problem, that it was a big deal, because it was getting in my way of being able to have any sort of true connection with any woman that I'd ever been with.
And now we know a lot more about why that's the case. Because, at the beginning of this process, it was kind of like just observations, right? Like, well, this is strange. Asking yourself a question of why wouldn't that allow me to be able to have the type of relationship I want? And now we understand a lot more about what was really happening for Rick and what's happening for millions of men in this culture, in our society today, that are experiencing very similar trends, where, that what's the big deal is that porn literally rewires the brain. Like, somebody that never had an addiction or regular use of porn, and it doesn't have to be an addiction to rewire the brain either, just so we're clear on that. Like, porn rewires the brain. Regular use of it in general, and the first use of it, is rewiring the brain for how it views sex, how the brain understands sex, how it understands the purpose of it, how it views women, and it desensitizes the brain to a real life partner, because no real life partner can compete with thousands upon thousands of women on a screen who are completely in a not real life situation, right? Even a picture is a super stimulus compared to a real life human being in person, because it is an image, it is a fantasy.
Right. And it completely just teaches men to objectify women. And I think that that's one of the most challenging parts, is when you do get that bad teacher, which is porn, teaching you all the different ways that, you are turned on, right, so to speak, in an unhealthy way. When you attach the different ways that you are looking for emotional needs to be met to things that are a super normal stimulus, then it's basically impossible for any partner to match up over the long run. They might match up in the short term, but in the long run, it's never going to be able to compete with millions and millions of other people and pixels on a screen. And
nor should a real person ever have to compete
with
that. That is not anything and unfortunately, that's what we see across the board for, just looking at people's social media. If you look on Facebook and you look at the pictures of their profiles, how many of those women are looking to appear sexy and appear that they are worthy of being sought after in a sexual way? Like, they are competing because that's what they have been also groomed by our society to believe they need to do in order to be good enough, or in order to be attractive or be wanted by a man.
Right.
And that's really, it's so sad to see it, because now you can, I never used to understand it that way, but now I really see that's how women are building their self-worth, is on whether they are sexually able to compete with what men are drawn to, which is now because of porn and all social media, not porn, as we call it, things that are basically creating the same effect of porn, but they aren't necessarily porn.
Right.
It's all out there all the time. And it's something that now women are growing up believing that they need to be like this in order to be good enough.
Yeah. And I wanted to go back and just touch on one of the things that you mentioned earlier about the different needs that our brains as porn addicts are really being trained by pornography. And when we think about those super normal stimuluses or stimuli that I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest things to realize about that is that the different things that men are learning, or addicts in general, because this isn't only a men issue, but that's who we're helping in this issue, with this issue. Those are needs that you're supposed to learn with your partner, with your long-term primary attachment figure. Those are the different emotional needs that you're supposed to discover with one another. That's what helps to create the unbreakable bond with the sexual intimacy between the two of you that doesn't have you going outside of the relationship, whether that's to pornography or an in-person affair with somebody in real life, which is a whole nother topic, because masturbation to women on a screen is also in real life, which is something that often gets minimized as well. It's I'm just watching porn on a screen. What's the big deal?
It's not
like,
real.
Well, yeah, right. It's not real. It's like you're in real life
real.
masturbating to another woman who's not me.
It's not your partner.
Right. And so I think one of the quotes that really describes that well that I had in a post was, the addiction will have you saying something like, my partner just needs to get over this and I'll do whatever it takes to keep porn in my life, as opposed to my partner's the most important thing in my life and I'll do whatever I have to get rid of the porn. And that's really kind of like, which one of those statements are you on? Which side of that spectrum are you on, where it's like, my partner's the most important thing to me and I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure that I'm being as faithful to her as I can. And, porn is my choice. And if she doesn't like it, then she has the choice to move on.
So
right?
That's, again, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's another really important point to make, is that's why this is a big deal. Like, if something is so emotionally connected to you, that's not your real life partner that you've chosen to do life with for the rest of your lives together, if there's something that you are willing to choose over that person, you have an emotional attachment to that thing more than you have an emotional attachment to your life partner. And that is a problem. Like, that is a big problem. So that's why it's a big deal. What's going on here and the reason for that, again, now we understand so much more about what's really going on in the brain with this, is that chemical release and the dopamine reward system that has been hijacked now with the super stimulus. This is what creates that emotional attachment, right? Like, those chemicals being released during orgasm, that's supposed to be, like you said earlier, for your partner and the bond that you're creating with that real life person in your life. Instead, you have trained your brain to be attached to pornography over and over and over. Every repetition that's happened over the years since childhood has created a bond with this false counterfeit relationship that a real life partner, if you actually had a monogamous relationship, an exclusive relationship with that person, it would be far more fulfilling than the emotional bond to porn. But because that has been there first, then the partner doesn't even have a chance to have that kind of opportunity for that connection with that person who's addicted.
Right. And that's why we often say, the affair partner isn't the pornography. The affair partner is actually the partner, right? Their
wife,
the relationship partner.
Yeah.
Right. The wife, the girlfriend, the fiance, they're the affair partner, because the emotional bond to pornography came in way before you were ever in the picture. And that's why, when we say these things, we're not like, you should know better, like shaming guys. We're like, hey, like, please, we invite you to kind of evaluate these perspectives and just ask yourself, like, does it feel like something's off? Because when your real life partner is the affair partner and the pornography is what was there far before the relationship ever came to be, that's a whole side of yourself that you've never even been able to allow yourself to open up to complete connection and security with your partner when there's been so much hiding and deceit for years because there's so much shame around what it was that you were doing at the beginning of the relationship that you were probably hoping at the time just wouldn't come out, or you didn't think it was a big deal, didn't see how it was going to impact the relationship. And now if you're watching this, you're probably realizing there's a lot of things adding up where this is becoming a big deal. So if you're in that place where it's like you are feeling like, well, if my partner's not okay with it, then she's free to leave. Like, is that the type of relationship that you want? Is that the type of connection that you want? Is that when you're committing your life to spend your life with somebody, when at the end of your time together, you're going to be sick and old and crippled and dependent on one another to help take care of one another for all the difficult challenges that just daily life is going to bring? Are you going to go to porn to assist you with the different things that you're needing? Or are you going to go to the partner that you've been spending your life with, that you've been committed to, and that you have devoted yourself to, right? Who are you going to turn to when you are really needing somebody, and, to have that level of gratitude and appreciation that they're there and they want to be there to help you because they love you more than anything else in the world.
Yeah.
It's really
it's quite the perspective to think about that. Like, do you want to be just to be you and porn at the end of your life? And, that's a pretty lonely place to be, where you realize that you've allowed this counterfeit to be in place of what would have been a real human, have that kind of close connection with, and, a partnership, life to do life with, and to have there for you. Need them. Absolutely. And that brings me to the first bullet point here about why, for women, why your instincts are screaming at you when you know that your partner is actively using porn. Because there's a lot, like I kind of laid out at the beginning of the post here, when I was making the announcement for this live, we gaslight ourselves all the time because we don't know we're doing that, but we do it because we're trying to figure out and reconcile these emotions between what we are told we're supposed to think about porn, how we're supposed to see it according to maybe our partner or according to society, and what we've been trained or to believe is socially to believe is the right way to see it, how you're supposed to feel versus what's actually going on inside of you, right? Like, there's this cognitive dissonance there that's like, this feels wrong, but maybe it's a me problem. What's wrong with me? And that's really, for me, on my side of this experience, how it was. Like, I really, in my past relationship, I was very much, I believed that to be true, that I was the one that had a problem because this was normal, something every man did. If I had an issue with it, it had to been because I was insecure about myself, which I was. And so I thought, yeah, that must be true. That must be me. That's the problem. And so, when you are...
But it wasn't because of porn.
No, right. No. When you realize that, your gut instincts are right. Like, when you understand why it makes sense that you feel cheated on, because you are being cheated on. Your monogamous relationship isn't monogamous if your partner is giving his sexual attention and energy and getting gratification from people outside of you. That's not monogamy, right? So of course your gut's saying there's something off here, and why can't I be the center of his attention? Why can't I be the prize? Why doesn't he choose me? Why does he not see me and notice me? Why am I not enough? Oh, because it's a you problem? No, it's not. It's not a you problem. And sure, we can work on our confidence. Sure, we should take care of ourselves. Sure, all those things, but
there
not
may be some insecurity, but not
to
because
compete,
of the porn.
and not to compete with porn. Right. Yes, exactly. And what's really crazy is when you do have a faithful partner who is only allowing all of his energy and sexual attention to be for you, then suddenly you don't need to look and feel perfect in order to know that you're good enough, because he sees you and he notices you now, and he knows you're good enough because that's all he wants and that's all he's choosing. So your confidence goes up very significantly, and not because you have to be perfect, but because you know you're chosen. And that's a huge part of that self-worth, self-esteem that we get to have in a monogamous relationship, and we get to enjoy in a securely attached relationship.
Yeah. And it's so interesting when you evaluate, when women are told, you're just insecure, that's why you have a problem with pornography. It's like, well, if that is true, like, it's not the insecurity that's like the actual insecurity of the porn, which I think is what most people with that statement, like you're just insecure about, these other women who are very attractive that your partner is pleasuring himself to. But the insecurity is real because there is insecurity. It goes back to if our partners are preferring pixels on a screen over us, then that is a lack of security in the relationship.
Why should I feel
because
secure?
Their relationship with porn is more secure than their relationship with you if they are in that earlier group where they say, if it's between you and porn, you're free to leave. Like, that's the camp where you have to realize they have a more secure attached relationship with pornography than they do with you. And that is a huge deal.
That's a big deal.
That's one of the biggest deals, right? And so as Katie mentioned the word gaslighting, one of the things that came to my mind is that I know that there's going to be guys who watch this who are in the camp of, I want porn to be out of my life. I don't want to be struggling with this. And I'm in the camp of, if it's between porn and my partner, then I choose my partner. And that's very much where I was. But it still required Katie to set up so many boundaries. And I think that a lot of women who have that conversation with their partner about, like, is it me or is it the porn? Am I free to leave, or are you are you wanting to do whatever it takes? The answer that a man who's really committed to overcoming his addiction is going to give is that it's you, but his actions aren't going to show it. And that it's not a him problem. It's a brain wiring problem. It goes back to what Katie mentioned at the beginning of this podcast about pornography hijacking the brain and the reward system. And so there's nothing wrong with him because he's saying that. He's not intentionally trying to gaslight you, but it really is gaslighting when you compare the actions versus the words, right? So that's why we talk so much about how porn addicts are just like any other addict to a substance. They oftentimes need an intervention, and the intervention is the boundaries.
Absolutely. And speaking of the brain and the wiring, that was also something that I wanted to mention of why it's a big deal, is that when you are an addict to, it's any addiction, but if you grow up and you have used this from childhood, which this is the case for a lot of men, you are basically using this for a regulation, emotional regulation, right? It's a coping mechanism. And so why it's a big deal with any addiction is because when we can't work on development of healthy coping mechanisms when we're dealing with really difficult things in life and we turn to addiction, we end up not developing the way we otherwise would. So we don't develop the ability to handle difficult emotions. We don't develop the ability to communicate our emotions. We don't develop the ability to have empathy for other people's difficult emotions. Like, there's so much lack of development that spreads in different areas of life that limits maturity in these areas. And that's why that's actually it was shocking to me as we got into this work and we began doing a lot of this research and working with couples, when we realized that this actually creates narcissistic traits in men. They don't want to be that way or even know that they're that way. But when you lack compassion and you can't have difficult conversations that are connecting because you work through really tough stuff and you have the emotional capacity to work those things, and you can't face, working through problems, and you're basically only turning to something that makes you feel good every time you're in a position that you have uncomfortable feelings that you're dealing with, that's the narcissistic trait, right? That's only focusing on you, and you're not able to actually healthily regulate yourself to care for another human being.
Right. And when you really begin to understand the different brain patterns that exist, it makes perfect sense for why they're that way. because literally they're quite literally operating out of the left side of their brain like 90% of the time, which is all about self-preservation, protecting me, and getting what I want, right? Right side of the brain is focused more on pathways that are connecting us to other people, having emotional empathy, compassion, consideration for the ways that our actions impact other people. And so there's just a severe imbalance in the activity in people's brains who are addicted to things, where they are very self-focused. It's very self-centered. When there's different reactivity that comes up for them and their behavioral and emotional responses, it's very much about them. There's no meaning that they're giving to a partner's pain, where it's like, hey, my partner's pain doesn't actually say anything inherently wrong with me. She's got to cry for help for me to care about what it is that my actions are doing to her, what it's causing, what the impact is of the actions that I'm doing, the impact that it's having on her, and the impact that it's having on her.
Yeah, and then you add to it the fact that addiction pathways basically they like bypass the normal way that our would function and the executive functioning parts of our brain, right? The addiction parts of the pathways that are enacted when you're dealing with an addiction. It's like it completely just goes from this need and this emotional, stimulus that happens, whether that's something that you see or something that happens to you, situation, right? Then it goes right to a craving. And then, of course, with the craving comes the action and behavior, which gives them. So it's like you're not even fully using, when you have addiction, you're not using all those normal parts of the brain that you would otherwise when you're making decisions, right? When we typically make decisions, we think about, hey, what kind of action, what kind of result did this give me in the past that I need to be remembering, aware of? Like, for instance, did this impact anybody negatively in life? Did this hurt me in any way? Is this really what I want to be doing? When we make decisions, typically we're using our memories, we're using our predictability of the consequence of our actions. We're using a lot of different parts of our brain that help us make sound decisions, right? They help us make decisions we're proud of, hopefully, most of the time.
In order to do that, you have to be using all of your brain, not
Right.
just part of it.
And that's what addiction does, is unfortunately, it's like, that's what was so hard for me in our process, was like, we had the conversation of, if it's between me or porn, you choose me. And we're like, all right, perfect, we're good. And yet you continue to choose this and continue to betray me. And it was very, very, very hard for me to understand how you could do that. And when you tried to, you were beginning to learn about the brain and how you were like, I didn't even think about you in those moments. And I'm like, what? Like, how could you, excuse me, how could you not think about me when we've gone through so much and I've been in so much pain? And then there's, of course, the disconnect to the pain that you were able to feel of mine and understand, because it's just porn, right? Like, it's not like you're actually cheating on me. And there's those social norms that we've come to believe that also make that disconnect there, right? I mean, it's just really insane when you think about all the different things that add up and create such a big deal for why partners are going through suffering. Women are going through betrayal trauma, severe betrayal trauma, and men have no clue what it is that their partner is going through, how deeply that's impacting them. And so, yeah, that's a pretty big deal if there's something that keeps you from actually care about and feel the impact of something so severe on your.
Yeah, there's so many reasons for why pornography is a big deal. And I think that for any guy who's ever tried to quit and has relapsed, that right there is like a number one indicator of, wow, this is a lot bigger deal than I thought, right? Like Katie was saying, I thought, like, oh, I've made the decision to quit and now I'm done. And I've quit smoking cigarettes successfully. Like, literally the day before I went on my first date with Katie, I was like, all right, I'm never smoking again. Haven't had a cigarette since. And so when it came to this, I thought it was going to be the same thing. I was like, if I could quit smoking, then I can quit this too. And, it can't be anything like smoking was, because, I did that for smoked cigarettes for 13 years of my life, and I just had this entirely false conception around how pornography wasn't going to be as severe as something like an addiction to smoking cigarettes. And boy, was I wrong. And
now we know it's actually harder than
Right.
drug addiction to overcome. Like, that's a statistic that has been shared very openly from a lot of different people who've gone through overcoming drug addictions, that this is harder. And the reason why is because you can access it at any time and no one even knows. You can actually, stimulate these same pathways in your brain through your thoughts and your memories. It's free, right? It's everywhere. There's opportunities in every nook and cranny of this world to be, to have those pathways stimulated. So
socially acceptable.
it's socially acceptable. Yep. It's not, it's
abundant.
just, yeah, it's not one of those things where you just can cut it off. You have to retrain the brain completely in order to have this be something that.
And I know, kind of going back to something you mentioned earlier about, when the addiction is really taking full force, it's really cutting off access to the entire brain. And so many women out there are like, that sounds like justification, or that sounds like excusing him, excusing the behavior. And the answer is, it's not excusing the behavior. It is that we are taking a realistic look at what's actually going on for him. And let's set an appropriate expectation for what it's going to take in order for him to overcome this.
Yeah, that leads us to that third point of what to do next if your relationship is struggling due to porn. So that's really the first step, is getting educated, listening to podcasts like ours, reading some books, realizing what it is that you're up against so that you don't believe that this is something that's going to easily just be gone just because he finally gets that this is something that's hurting you. It's going to take a lot more than that. So the first step really is education. Second step is going to be, and this could be even a first step, though it could be whatever comes first for you, but having a conversation with your partner about just getting really real about, hey, what do you want for our relationship? What do you really want? Do you want to have things stay exactly the way they are right now for the rest of our life? Do you want to have a close connection to me? Do you want our relationship to be fulfilling? Here's what I want, and be able to share what you really want with them. A lot of women, when they have conversations with men in their lives that are addicted to porn, it comes across very shaming and very attacking and judging. And it makes sense. Like I get that because I was in that place too. When there were relapses that happened, I also treated Rick that way as well, because I had no idea what it was that he was actually experiencing.
And even that goes back to, that's not to say there's something wrong with you. Just like there's reasons for why he is the way that he is, there's also reasons for why you developed to be the way that you are.
So the important thing here is to approach him with a level of compassion that says, hey, I get that this is something that's going to be difficult, but I also need you to get that this is something that I am not okay with, because it's not going to give us the relationship that I truly want with you, because I love you and I want to grow old with you. I want to have close connection to you. I want to have something that's unbreakable. And I want it to be us against the world, right? However you want to word it. Obviously, you word it for how it's true for you. But that's really, for me, when I had the conversation with Rick, that's one thing I did right, was I came to him and was not judging and shaming him. I was, at the beginning anyways, I was trying to say, hey, I know that this is something that you've been open with me that you use. And I know I told you at the beginning that I was fine with that, but now I am not. I never really was deep down. And now I'm understanding why, because I actually want a really amazing relationship. I want an exclusive relationship with you where I am choosing you and you are choosing me. And it's creating an incredible future together. And if that's not something that you also want with me, and you want porn, I respect that, and that's okay. But that's not what I want. And so that's really the real conversation that has to happen. And I know that can sound really difficult when you've got a family and you've spent 10, 20 years together, but that still is the first step that has to happen. Have to figure out if you guys want this same thing together or not.
Yeah. And do we define a monogamous relationship in the same way? Do we have the same expectations? That level of commitment looks like?
Yeah. As if that isn't what he wants and he doesn't have the same desire that you do for a securely attached exclusive relationship, then no one's going to be able to change him but him. We can't force somebody to change. It's going to have to be that he decides for himself that he doesn't want this because it's keeping him from what he actually wants with you. So if he does say that that is something he wants, then next comes the talk about what boundaries are going to be needing to be in place. We always recommend that the most important boundary that you put in place is not that if you do this again, I'm done. It's you're going to be needing help to overcome this. This isn't something you can do on your own. This is going to require effort and time and consistency with the right type of help and the intentional work in order to completely, create a transformation with your brain so that we can both feel like we don't have to worry about this ever coming back in our life later. So the boundary should be I will need you to be getting help with the right people within this amount of time.
Yeah, I think that's such a important piece, and it's really hard for women to be able to know how they can do that. And I think it really highlights the need for support and community for women who are really committed to overcoming this with their partner. And so that is a big reason for why we started up the support groups that we have for men only and women only during the week. And currently we're holding those on Friday nights at 7 p.m. for the women and 15 for the men.
Eastern time.
So if you are the struggle of overcoming the addiction and you are committed to seeing it through with your partner, it doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy road. I don't care where you go for help. It's going to be a roller coaster of emotions. So just know that one of the most important things for you to do, whether you're the man or the woman, is to be in a community where you have people who can relate to your process, who can relate to your pain, and who can validate your side of the experience, because both men and women are needing compassion in this process. That doesn't mean coddle the addict and, just feel super sorry for him. No, let's have care and consideration and compassion for him and help hold him accountable and responsible for the impact of his actions and being the only man, the only individual, the only person who can save him from himself.
Absolutely. And those support groups are a really good first step. If that's something that interests you, you can go to our website and check them out. Go to www.rewire4success, and that's the number 4, rewire4success.life, Life, and then click on support at the top there, and you can check out our groups. Now, if you're not just wanting to take a first step, you're like, we are ready. We need help. We want to overcome this. We want to do whatever it's going to take. We need the step-by-step exact work to do. That would be the next step. There would be to get on a call with one of our couples recovery advisors to talk with you more about what your situation is and whether or not it seems like it would be a good fit for working with us in our program.
And if that's something that you're interested in, you can just comment below advisor and we'll reach out to you to get that call booked.
Yep. All right. Should we see if we have any questions here? Not seeing any questions. Oh, there is a question. Okay, so my partner is here sober, cold turkey from porn, does not feel he needs any support. How do you proceed from here? I am in group therapy. However, I feel part of my healing is him getting support. That is a really, really great question. It is possible to quit cold turkey, but as far as it being a complete transformation where you can both feel very confident that that is not something that's ever going to be an issue again, there is work and support absolutely he's going to need. And I understand why that not just like, oh, okay, we're good then. There's a lot of you're going through a process too. When you've gone through betrayal and you know that your partner has had an issue with this, your healing, your trust building is a journey in itself. It is completely separate from his. So what you're basically saying is, I need evidence.
Yeah, and I think that for any guy, when you're looking for the full transformation, for a guy who's serious about his relationship with his partner, he's going to be committed to saying, hey, what is it that you need? Like, what questions can I answer for you? Like, I want to give you as much information as you're possibly needing so that you can live in peace, because I love you. I care about you. I don't want you living in hell, right? If a guy's actually made a transformation to where he no longer has any sort of emotional pulls or desires or cravings for other women in any sort of capacity, then that's going to come along with developing empathy and compassion for his partner, taking accountability and responsibility for the impact of his actions, and saying, I want to do whatever it takes to create the most amazing relationship with you. And for women, it takes a lot of evidence, a lot of trust building through being able to understand what the changes are for their partner that they've made, right? Because when you think about our brains, they're made up of wiring and neurons, and there's a ton of them, right? We've got like 18 billion different neurons in our brains. And in order to make a complete transformation, you're going to have to rewrite and rewire about 1 billion of those. And that takes time, because your brain's like a battery. It's got a certain percent of a charge each day. It can rewire and recreate different neurons at a specific rate, but it's going to take time. So it's not going to be an overnight thing by any stretch of the imagination. And for men who are committed, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be emotionally overwhelming at times. It doesn't mean that in that process, to your partner being a man who's truly committed to giving you everything that you need, it doesn't mean that he's going to start there. It means that he's going to reach that point in his recovery process where he understands completely what it is that you're needing for your healing, and he's committed to giving you as much information as you could possibly want. And that comes with time. That comes with development, with maturity, with growth. But it is definitely a place that the relationship has to reach if you want it to be something that's emotionally connecting, where there's an ability for you as the man, as the addict, to not only have compassion and empathy for your partner, but to open up true emotional empathy, to even be available as an option for her to give back to you. And that is what really solidifies the connection. That's what makes it a secure relationship, because you can't have a secure relationship when only one side is secure. So long as the betrayed partner is not secure in the relationship, you're not in a secure relationship. You are on a spectrum building towards a secure relationship with each day of intentional effort, but there's no security when a betrayed partner doesn't have security. The relationship cannot be fully secure.
Yeah, that's good. So it's basically, the whole point of why our program is called Relationship Rebuild is because it's not called quit porn, because there's so much more to this than just not using porn, right? We've got major impacts that have happened on him and on her, and then the relationship too. There's 3 entities here that are all in a different journey to healing. So that's really the reality that we're faced with. And that's why what we do, we are here to help couples overcome the effects of addiction in life. And that's so many different things that can look like. Lots of different things that need to be worked on intentionally, focused on. And it makes sense that your healing is not just an independent journey. Like it's a very, what we like to say, intricately interwoven journey, because you can't heal something on your own that was caused by your partner. You need him, and you need the two of you, a couple-centered approach in order to fully be able to heal and reattach the way that you want to. So we'll see you next week, and take care and have a great rest of your day.
Enjoy your 4th of July. Take care.